special guest. We have been known as the three wise men, Mike, Verl, and myself. But from time to time, we have to get a real wise person on the show. So we did a show about the vaccine, and people said we want a wise person that really knows about the vaccine. So here she is. This is Dr. Shomo. Dr. Shomo is a board certified family medicine physician. She serves as a director of the Family Medicine Scholars Program at the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine. She's a graduate of Shaw High School, go Cardinals, in East Cleveland. She earned her Bachelor's of Art in Spanish and Doctor of Medicine from Ohio University. Ohio State, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Ohio State University, excuse me. Yeah. She has a program, Dr. Shomo Knows, that you can check out, www.drshomoKnows.com. And she covers some very interesting subjects. I actually did the yoga this weekend because I felt like I needed to kind of limber up a little bit. So yoga is just one of the things she does. Also, she was recently appointed or elected the next president of the Cincinnati Medical Association. And she is a part of the first all-woman executive board, along with Dr. Lane and Dr. Dixon. The Cincinnati Medical Association was founded in 1925, and it's a local branch of the National Medical Association, which was founded in 1895. The mission of the Cincinnati Medical Association is to support the delivery of quality medical care to the traditionally underserved segments of greater Cincinnati community, to serve as an advocate for the underrepresented populations of the tri-state region, excuse me, and to enhance the professional practice of the minority physicians. So as you can imagine, she's probably a little bit busier than Mike and I are these days, you know. She's got a lot on her plate. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome you, Dr. Shomo. And today our topic is going to be about the vaccines. You know, we hear so many things, you know, the vaccine's good. I think about 6 months ago, it was Black people don't need to take the vaccine because they can't catch COVID. I think we sort of debunked that. And, you know, there are different types of vaccines, you know, and I personally am going to take the vaccine because I feel that the risk of taking a vaccine is better than the risk of getting COVID, COVID-19, which can kill you. And it did, you know, and it doesn't really matter what age. There was a 9-year-old young man that got it yesterday and passed away today. So it doesn't matter your age. It's not just senior citizens that can get it and have a bad outcome. It's people of any age. So I think first we want to talk about the different types and brands of vaccine and how they work. And Mike and Ver, I'll let you guys chime in here a little bit to maybe, you know, add your what you'd like to talk about.
Okay.
Mhm.
Hey, good evening, Dr. Shomo, and thank you so much for joining us. The last time you were on the show, I was out of town or something, and unfortunately, I missed you. But I'm so glad I got to be here today to share with you some of our concerns.
Yeah, I didn't get the memo that we were supposed to wear shirts and ties now.
Well, we are our fearless leader over there. He'll find us points if we don't have the shirt down. Anyway,
You might dock my pay.
yeah. In blue, we can only go in the negative.
My bitcoins.
Right. But Dr. Shomo, I had a question. You know, with the we hear a lot of things about the limited amount of testing and how they fast track the vaccine through the Operation Warp Speed and the necessity for having one. Do you feel like the vaccine is really safe?
So first of all, let me say that I have received the vaccine. My husband and I are both physicians, and we both have received both doses, 2 doses of the Moderna vaccine. And so I'm sitting here talking to you, and he's upstairs making lasagna. So we've been fine. But the biggest thing about when people say that the vaccine has been fast tracked, it really was not fast tracked. What's happened is there's a lot of technology that's changed. So the last vaccine that I can remember coming out was the HPV vaccine, which was in about 2000s, the early 2000s it came out.
Right.
In about the 1990s, the Human Genome Project was basically the biggest rage, which basically means that they have decoded the entire human DNA. All of our DNA we have the map of everything now. So this is the first these are the first vaccines that are being developed in that. I mean, of course, there's other vaccines they've been trying to work on, but this is the first time that they had an emergency situation where they're like, all right, we've decoded the human genome, so let's put that technology to work. So I watched a webinar from I can't even remember what his name is. His name, I know what his name is. Hildreth. He is the president of the Meharry College of Medicine, and he is also on the FDA. So I watched a webinar for him that was, that he did for a lot of Black women physicians who wanted to have a Q&A with him. And his presentation was really good because he does a lot of HIV work. So a lot of people are saying, why are we able to get this vaccine so easily? We're so fast when they've been working on HIV for years. And the thing is, the HIV virus is a retro DNA virus, which is weird. It's a very weird virus. But because they've had to put a lot of resources into trying to find a vaccine for HIV, they have a network. Sorry, somebody's trying to call me. They have a network of. They had the network already from the HIV. Like, they've like countries all over the world. Countries have been trying to find an HIV vaccine. So when coronavirus came out and is devastating this whole, nation, global pandemic, they shifted their resources from HIV to coronavirus, but they already had the network. So there's never been a time when like measles was going on or, all types of other pandemics are happening, or Spanish flu, of course, 100 years ago. When that was going on, they didn't have these networks set up. So because they had the network set up and people could information share, they were able to crack the code in a month. So they literally said, oh, this is a coronavirus. Here is the code, like last January. And so that's the thing. Before we even knew about it in the U.S., before it was even have a name in the U.S., they already had the code. And so then they started the trials in February. So February of 2020, they already started the trials before we even shut down anything in the U.S. And so that's when people are saying, it's fast track. It's because they don't know the backstory. I didn't know the backstory either, of course. Sorry, I can't put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I'm on call right now. But somebody's calling me. But so, it sounds like it's been fast, but it took about 10 months. So it came out in December, but they really didn't fast track anything. The way that they were able to do this was because, number one, it's been such a contagious disease that they designed studies to make it so that they had enough numbers. Because usually it would be hard to get, the amount of cases that you need and all that sort of thing. But because there's been millions and millions of people infected, it's been really easy to find people who, to find at-risk populations. So they studied, they went into hospitals, like they went into my hospital. We had a Moderna trial here in Cincinnati. So they came to UC, they asked the residents if they wanted to sign up. They asked medical professionals, nurses, doctors. They're like, hey, you all are at risk of getting this coronavirus. Would you like to possibly get the vaccine if you are chosen in that group? So a lot of people stepped up to do that. And because it was an at-risk, population of people who were in the study group, there were obviously, it was easier to study. So a lot of times people are looking at it like, wow, that was fast. But it's just a matter of having the technology, having a very contagious disease that is finding like the right population to be able to study it, and have people be able to sign up for it. So there were 30,000 people in each study, in the Moderna and the Pfizer trial. The Johnson & Johnson one is they've released the data, but I haven't looked at that one as much. I haven't looked at all the data of it just yet. I looked at the numbers, but I'm not sure like how many people were in it. But I've done extensive like reading about Moderna and Pfizer, which are both mRNA vaccines. So the reason why they were able to get them out was just because we've had this mRNA technology for about 20 years. So that's what I'm saying. And I don't remember the last big vaccine that we really even had, but this is the first time that we've needed to use all this technology that we have. So I just want people to know that there were no shortcuts that were taken. It would just happen fast because we have the technology and because it's a very deadly disease. And there were lots of people who wanted to sign up. There were residents who signed up. There were doctors who signed up. There were nurses who signed up. So they had, just an attentive audience of people who were like, "Yep, sign me up for those trials. Let's get it going." So that's kind of how it was able to happen so quickly. But they didn't skip any steps, and I think that's what people think. They're like, "Oh, they
That's
skipped
great.
steps." They didn't skip any steps.
I just got a question here from Michigan. And this person wants to know the 2-dose Pfizer vaccine. There have been tests that substantiate that 2 doses is certainly superior to 1. And also, is it true or false that the antibodies developed in the body after someone has been infected are a short-lived protectant to reinfection, so you could become reinfected after a period of time?
Yeah, for natural immunity, you mean?
Yeah,
Without the
natural
vaccine?
immunity.
Yes.
From someone who's had the virus
Yes.
can become infected again.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
they say that they think that there's about a 90-day window when people generally don't get reinfected.
Mhm.
But after that 3-month period, you definitely can get the coronavirus again.
So if you've had it or you haven't had it, the vaccine is going to ensure that you have a more extended
Right.
period of antibody protection. And how about the 2-dose Pfizer vaccine? Has that been substantiated that 2 doses are definitely better than 1?
Yes. Yeah, they both have been substantiated that. So the last thing that I read about it was about after one dose, it's about 50% immunity of 50, because with the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, they both increase the risk of basically increased protection by 95%. So you have a
Okay.
95% chance of not getting COVID,
Okay.
and you have a 5% chance of getting COVID. But if you do get COVID, then it won't be severe. And I had somebody ask me today, like, well, if I can get it, it won't be like it's just preventing me from getting severe COVID. Like, why would I want to get that? And I'm just like, you understand that severe COVID means the possibility of dying, like ICU, complications, strokes, dialysis. Like this COVID has been real serious. There's been a lot of people having a lot of problems with it. So when you talk about severe COVID, I think people hear like severe COVID, like it doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? We say all these words and they don't mean things to people, but when you break it down and say preventing severe COVID means preventing death from COVID, preventing chronic kidney disease, chronic lung disease, chronic heart disease, strokes, neurological disease, like all types of things we're trying to prevent when we talk about severe COVID.
Dr. Shomo, I just wanted to mention something real quick. The outgoing head of the CDC had mentioned, I heard him on NPR, was that COVID attacks whatever system in you is weak at the time. Like if you've had respiratory problems, it'll attack your lungs. If you've had heart problems, it'll attack your heart. So what makes this virus so special in that it kind of like targets those areas?
It doesn't necessarily target any specific area. What actually kills people and why COVID has been so rough is that it basically induces like an inflammatory response in your body. So, and it's not necessarily that whatever is weak in your body, it's just whatever feels the most triggered by it. So, when you think about our immune systems are very powerful. So we think about like diabetes. Diabetes is autoimmune disease. That's your body basically attacking your pancreas. We think about Graves' disease, the same thing, autoimmune disease, the body attacking your thyroid, lupus. So there's all these autoimmune diseases of our immune system kind of going overboard and overdoing itself to the point where it causes harm. And that's kind of what this particular virus brings out of our body. It makes your body attack itself and kind of overdo it in response to whatever is happening. So, for some people, it doesn't do that. There's been some people who had COVID and obviously not had symptoms and that sort of thing. But for the people who have had a lot of symptoms and have died, it's generally because their body was like through the kitchen sink at this virus, trying to protect itself, but it ended up doing more harm than good. So it's just one of those things where, and it's just rough. Like there's no rhyme or reason really for which part of your body can be affected.
Now we have another. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. We have another question. I'll talk.
Okay.
I'll ask you after Mike.
Okay, first of all, this is Black History Month, and I wanted to remind people that the 100th anniversary of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre is approaching us, and that it's going to be a show today, a rebroadcast of the documentary of that experience, an American experience. It was originally broadcast in 1993, and it comes on tonight on PBS at 8 o'clock, February 8th, 8 o'clock on PBS. Now, my first statement is that, there was a lady, I know I saw an article on her about a month ago that said this lady was working on this virus vaccine, long before it came here. And then, the things that, they say, well, okay, then, to back up, to say what you were saying is that they were already working on something, and they say, hey, this may work for this virus. And it did. And then they started to develop it. Now, the one thing that I wanted to ask you, doctor, is that how did the doctors and healthcare workers feel when we all found out that the Trump administration had no plan or no workable plan to distribute the vaccine?
Right. I mean, I think that everybody, we already knew that. So at this point in the medical community, there's a lot of apathy. Like, we are definitely, there's going to be so many books, and so there's so much trauma, like PTSD from being a healthcare worker during this whole situation, because it's just like, it's hard because, you see people, you see the government not do anything. Because I know, like, for me, I get frustrated at times when you're like, man, these people are not wearing masks or not doing this or not doing that. And you're like, people are going to be people. You keep trying to tell people to do the right thing, but that's not, people aren't going to do the right thing. People are very selfish. They think about themselves, and it's up to the government to protect people from themselves at times. People didn't want to wear seatbelts, at a time until it was the law. People didn't want to do all types of things until it was a law. So you think about policy and policymakers and how important they are. And so I think that for a lot of, I remember, I remember having this conversation with somebody who told me, like in November, they weren't going to vote. They were like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. They both seem the same, Biden or Trump. And I literally screamed at the top of my lungs. Like, I cannot believe that you don't, like, people just don't see it. People just don't see it. But we as physicians, that's part of what we do. We do a lot of advocacy. We're very in touch with politics. We're very in touch with policy, and just, how things change from administration to administration. I literally lost my job. I lost a job when Trump got elected. So I think that people don't see that side of it because, I'm a state employee. I work for University of Cincinnati. So there was a grant that I was working on that was, that had some government funding and all that sort of stuff. So we literally have jobs that are tied to a lot of this stuff. So I think that a lot of people don't have to think about it because they're not, their jobs are not affected by it. Their lives are not affected by it, but our everyday is affected by it. Mm-hmm. So when they announced that, it was just like, yeah, we already knew that. Like, it was just like, we've been angry for months. And at this point, we're just so apathetic. Like, we're happy to have the vaccine, but we're just so done with everything. I mean, there's going to be so many doctors who quit working and nurses who quit just because it's just been rough.
One of my concerns is, we talked about this in a couple of shows. They laughed at me, but I was talking about the black market. People, we just had
talking about paying $25,000 per doses, all this sort of thing. Yeah.
And the security of the stock. On Friday, just this past Friday, a delivery truck was stolen, had over 300 doses in it. And then, people got, and the same thing last week, there were people that got the vaccine that had spoiled, and they had to re-get the vaccine again because the vaccine wasn't no good. Right. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I know Robert wanted to say something, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we had a question from Doral, Florida. And this young man wants to know, he says, I take immunosuppressant drugs. How will the vaccine affect me? Should I get the vaccine or not? It sounds like maybe he had a transplant or something. He didn't say, but he just says he takes immunosuppressant drugs. Right. So it could have been something else. Could you speak to that? Because I guess that's pretty common.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people who take immunosuppression for all types of things. So for renal transplants, but there's a lot of people who take it for like rheumatoid arthritis
Mhm,
or for psoriasis.
mhm.
So people who have really bad psoriasis, or even things like
Lupus too, right? Don't
well,
people?
yeah, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. But there's all types of people who are on immunosuppression for things that you wouldn't even think about. So, like I said, psoriasis is a weird thing that most people wouldn't think about having immunosuppression as a treatment. So we treat immunosuppression with a lot of things because, like I said, there's a lot of processes in our body where our immune system is kind of overreacting.
Mhm,
So the immunosuppression kind of helps your body to kind of calm down.
mhm.
But I encourage everybody who has any kind of special case to talk to their own doctor individually because there are for people with immunosuppression, there is not any exclusion. The only contraindication for taking this vaccine is if you are allergic to anything that's any ingredient in the vaccine. So that
Okay.
is the only contraindication. Absolute contraindication is if you have if you have a history of allergies to any of the 10 ingredients, because that's the one thing that people say too. I don't know what's in the vaccine. There's literally 10 ingredients in the vaccine.
Okay.
And most people wouldn't like the only way that you would know that if you were allergic to it is if you've ever had a vaccine reaction. So if you've ever had a vaccine reaction, you can look and see what the ingredients were for that vaccine and compare it to this vaccine to see if you might be allergic to any of the components, because they're not like normal things that are just in the environment. Um,
Would that be a future test or anything for coming up after things settle down that you could test to see if you're allergic to it before you take it?
no, not necessarily because you wouldn't know. And I mean, there have been a couple of cases where people may have had allergic reactions, but that's why they observe you.
Okay.
So after you have the vaccine, you have to be observed for 15 minutes, and they have like you literally go into a waiting room, and there's a person who's keeping track of what time you came in there, and then they tell you that you're fine, you're free to go. So they can't necessarily. Um, they do tell people who have a history of allergies to get an EpiPen, like people who've had reactions, say you're allergic to shellfish or allergic to anything, that sort of thing. They say to make sure to get an EpiPen from your doctor before you get it. But that's the only contraindication for it. So as far as immunosuppression, talk to your doctor about it. It should be a decision between you and your doctor, but it's not a no. The answer is not like definitely no, you can't get it. The answer is you should talk to your doctor and decide with your doctor about it because I don't know the medicine, all that sort of stuff. So I can't really give medical advice. I can just say that the only contraindication is having a history of like allergic reactions to the ingredients.
Okay.
But there are like certain groups that are not approved at this time that they don't. So the way that studies work is that they don't just go automatically studying like children and pregnant women. That they're like a special population. You're
Yeah.
not allowed to do studies on them unless you can prove that it's safe in adults.
Mhm.
So those two groups are currently doing studies on pregnant women and children right now after they've proven that it was safe in adults. But the thing is, there are a lot of pregnant women who are getting the vaccine. There are some people who are worried about fertility issues. People are like, well, will I be able to get pregnant after this? And it's just so many questions. But for me, which the answer is yes, there were people in the studies who got pregnant. So they didn't recruit pregnant people into the studies, but they studied these for like 10 months. So there were some people who got pregnant in the time that they were studying. So absolutely, people can still get pregnant after taking the vaccine. But to me, it's just like my parents, like my dad, Mike Shomo on here, took us and got us all the vaccines. We got every I've gotten every vaccine that has ever been offered to me. Tetanus shots, MMR. The chickenpox vaccine wasn't a thing when I was young. Hepatitis B. I got hepatitis A like when I went to Haiti. I've gotten a lot of vaccines. Um, I get the flu vaccine every year. So for me, it's just one of those things that I don't know why people are so paranoid about it. Like I get vaccines all the time and I've been fine. And so I don't know why people have so much paranoia about what's in it. Am I gonna be infertile? It's like, well, I've gotten a lot of vaccines and they've like I don't know why that's a question. Like
Well, it's
I
not.
don't
It's
know.
probably.
Like
It's
I don't know
probably.
why.
I think we can say with uh, be pretty certain that there's probably not a microchip in the vaccine. Right?
Yes, there is not a microchip in the like it doesn't even make sense because have you ever seen a microchip?
I
They're too
know,
like
but
how do you inject a microchip into someone?
so many things don't make sense nowadays. I just had to say
it's just a lot of paranoia. There's a lot of paranoia about, fertility issues, injecting with microchips. And it's just like, number one, we don't need microchips. We have phones that tell our
Yeah,
everything.
we already we all carry
all
a
of that
microchip
stuff.
around with us.
Right.
We carry
So
this
there's
microchip all the time.
right. So there's that. And then the fertility issues. I don't know. I don't know why people are concerned about that. Just because it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, why would a vaccine make you infertile? It doesn't make. It just doesn't logically make any kind of sense to me. And the same thing with why they would need to inject you with a microchip. So there's just a lot of these conspiracies out there. I think that people just like to make conspiracies and scare people and have fear.
It was just like when I was in college back a long time ago. They would have you call this office, and it was called rumor control. When you
Yeah.
heard something, you just call and ask was it true, what's going on, and stuff like like that. But they need some rumor control. But let me talk about ask you about President Biden had mentioned that we're going to war, and he wants to use the wartime situation to have more vaccines produced. Now, back when the war and in World War II, they took over a lot of companies, that and went to work for the government. They made Jeeps, they made tanks. In fact, right here in Cleveland, we had a tank plant right over where the IX Center now. It used to be the tank plant, So in the 40s, they had a dispute about television because there were so many people. Like the Forest had the 3-diode tube, Westinghouse had part of it, Philips had part of it, the Marconi company had part of it. And what they did was is they made a patent pool. The government made them put all the patent in the pool and use the patent to make television because they needed to to make sonar and stuff like that. And then that's when it came out in the early 50s of television, and what we know it today, and that has evolved into the flat screen and all that stuff. But nevertheless, these companies, in fact, I just heard, I had asked about this before some shows ago. They have taken people who make the vaccine, who have the patent on the vaccine in Europe, and the people that produce other vaccines to go into their production and make it in there.
Right.
And
They're doing that here with Merck. So, that's the whole thing. They've talked about right now we have 3 vaccines. I don't think the Johnson & Johnson, I still haven't heard about the Johnson & Johnson having FDA emergency approval just yet, but it's probably, it's probably coming. It's probably going to be approved just because it's about as effective as the flu vaccine, and the more vaccines we can have, the better, So they're saying that, but there were six people that's still, trying to work in development. So we have 3. So they said that Merck, the pharmaceutical company Merck, pulled out. And so they'll probably, try to get Merck, I'm sure they will probably make Merck produce more vaccine because we need like all hands on deck. And that's what's been so frustrating about this. Is like, this is an emergency situation and it has not been handled like an emergency.
Well, it seems like just like 1 or 2 companies want to make all the money. That's what
right.
That's called a Defense Production Act.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the president he can make a company produce something that's needed for in an emergency.
Right. I understand.
Yeah. And Trump, I guess, was reluctant to really use that. He didn't really use it. But Biden, you can walk into a vaccine, manufacturing facility and say, hey, from now on, we want you to make, coronavirus vaccine.
Right.
And usually they'll go along because you can force them to do it really, if you want
Right.
to.
Well, don't Trump own stock in one of the companies or a couple of those companies that make?
I believe it was Moderna. It was Moderna. Yeah, he owns stock in the Moderna. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people do at this point, but it's just one of those things. I don't know. Like, before you even get to owning stock, they did absolutely nothing. Like, I literally have told this story a million times. I feel like at this point.
Okay, give it to us one more time then.
I came back. So I go to Haiti usually this time of year, every year. And I came back from Haiti. When we landed in Haiti, February 21st last year in 2020.
Wait a minute, hold it. Why do you go to Haiti?
Oh, I'm sorry. I go to Haiti to volunteer. Where there's a hospital there in La Vallée de Jacmel that we volunteer, and I basically manage the primary care team, but we do a lot of surgeries, cataract surgeries, restore vision. We do a lot of different
Oh,
hernia
okay.
surgeries. We do all types of stuff.
Okay.
So I was in Haiti last year with the mission, and we landed in Haiti on February 21st last year. When we landed in Haiti on February 21st, they were scanning our temperatures and giving us little paper sheets that said, if you get sick, make sure you tell the health, care workers, which there really are not very many, make sure you tell them that you traveled recently, right? So that kind of like puts you at alert, like, oh, there's something going on. There's an emergency happening that I should be worried about, and it's somehow connected to travel. Maybe I shouldn't go anywhere, So February 21st, when I landed in Haiti, I was like, should I be in Haiti helping them, or should they be in the US helping us? Because when
Yeah.
I came back to Miami on March 1st, there was absolutely nothing in Miami when I landed March 1st, 10 days after I landed in Haiti. There was absolutely nothing. Nobody checking temperatures. Nobody asking us where we came from. Nobody asking us where we're going. It was like nothing. So it's just like one of those things that before you even get to owning stock in a Moderna vaccine, there was absolutely no response to trying to even stop it in the first place.
Well, that's when Trump was saying it was a hoax. It was something that
Yeah.
Democrats made up.
And
Well,
then
he
like
knew
in
he
Ohio,
was at a meeting in January,
right,
and they knew how devastating this virus could be.
right.
And
And then when we
what
came
was
back
what was
though, that was when Ohio was doing well, and DeWine like
Mhm.
literally 10
Yeah,
days later, DeWine closed everything down. So our governor did a good job at
yeah, he
first
did.
of
Yeah,
closing
yeah,
everything down. But the issue
yeah.
was that we didn't have the money. Like Canada was giving people $2,000 a month for
Mhm.
months, so people could, not so people could pay their, bills and that sort of thing. But the issue in the U.S. has been because the government has just ignored it and just left people basically to starve.
Left them
Then
hanging.
it makes people desperate. They have to go and work, and so you can't stay at home if you don't have food. You know what I mean? You're trying to survive, and it's like you're trying to survive, but then you're going out and getting the virus and dying, and it's just a terrible. It's like this. Is this the U.S. or is this
Lot.
Haiti? Like I don't know. I haven't known the past year if I landed in the U.S. or I don't know where I am.
Well, many people believe it was intentional in order to make money on the stock. Because the two people that just lost their Senate seats in Georgia
Yeah.
were in a meeting late in January when they talked about this, and the first thing they did when they went out of the meeting was to go buy Moderna stock, and where that was discussed. And I had a similar experience. I was in Las Vegas at a meeting the third week in February, and when I came back from Las Vegas, I had to fly to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then Cleveland. And every Asian person on the plane in Las Vegas had on a mask. And so I was sitting next to this Asian young man. He was 17. We got to talk, and I said, "Well, why do you have on a mask?" He said, "Because there's a virus that spread in many of the Asian countries, and he probably will be spreading here." And he said, "I have an extra mask. Would you like one?" I said, "Thank you very much." But he was everybody, the only people on the plane, this was an Airbus, it was a pretty big plane. The only people on the plane that I saw with masks were another young guy who was a college athlete from Brigham Young and myself. And I think we were the only two non-Asian people that had masks on.
Yeah.
And we had heard nothing about this virus. But
Right.
the powers to be, they knew about it. They
Right.
knew about it. We didn't know about it, but every Asian person on the plane had on a mask.
Right. Because they had a lot of deaths that were going on at that
Mhm.
time, and and I don't know, and that's the problem in the US. We don't know because we didn't have the tests and that sort of thing available. We don't know how many people died from COVID in January or February before they were, had tests readily available. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if people were trying to make money off of it or they just didn't know what to do. But it's one of those things that, like for me being in my 30s, I was born in the 80s. So I don't know if you all know this, but my parents had kids for like 3 decades in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So I'll say I'm part of the 80s bunch. So you know, in my lifetime, I've never felt like, I mean, of course, you know, I was in high school when September 11th happened. So of course you're like, oh wow, that was pretty crazy thing to watch on TV. Like, you know, it's one of those moments of like, where were you when that happened? That's pretty much one of the few things in my lifetime that I remember like, oh wow, the histories are books are really gonna talk about this time forever. You know, like so it's just one of those things of I don't know what kind of decisions they were making, if they felt like, you know, if they felt I don't know. I don't want to say that I feel like people were intentionally trying to do harm to the
Mhm.
American people. I just don't know if they knew what to do.
Right.
And I know that because I know that's one of the things that Trump said he didn't want to panic people. I think he's just not a good leader. Like I don't think he was trying to make money off of people. I
Mhm.
think he just didn't know what to do, so he didn't do anything, and he just hoped it would go away. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
just one of
All
those
right.
things when you're like you're a TV like
But he just,
millionaire,
but he
you
has,
Almost
don't have any experience in something like this, and he
yeah,
just was not qualified. And I
yeah.
mean, of course, the people around him, you know, I mean, that's and I remember like when he got elected, my husband was like, I don't know, maybe he'll, you know, he's a business person, maybe he'll hire good people around him to help him make decisions. But he just hired like the absolute worst people around him to help him make decisions.
boys, his people.
But
Right. And so
he
it's just
did. I give
been
it to him. He did hedge his bet by
His,
some Moderna stock. So,
his cronies.
right. So I don't know that. I mean, by buying the stock, I don't know that he was. I don't think that he intentionally would have thought that close to 1 million people were going to die from coronavirus. He probably was just like, yeah, we'll see what happens. But if
I
if
don't know.
you would have told Trump, even in his whatever crazy mind, that we
Mhm.
might lose close to 500,000 people because of coronavirus, I don't think he would have believed that would have happened. I don't think he would have
Mhm.
gone out of his way to try to make that happen.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Shaw, I had a question. Recently, our governor has said that he wanted most of the school age children back in school within 90 days. Um, so the question is like two-part. Do you think that's enough time? Do kids have are they less likely to contract the disease? And also, do you think herd immunity will have kicked in by then?
Well, in order for us to reach what they're calling herd immunity, which basically means people getting vaccinated, because the regular immunity from from the actual like disease doesn't last. So the only way that we will get to herd immunity is to have 70% of people being vaccinated.
Right.
So if you're saying, do I think that 70% of people can be vaccinated within the next 90 days, fully vaccinated with 2 doses? Um, I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's possible that in the next 30 days they can roll it out and try to vaccinate. I guess how many people we have in Ohio? 11 million people. Well, last time I checked, it was around 11 million people. So it's possible, but so it just depends on if we can get 70% of people vaccinated in that amount of time. The biggest issue right now with trying to get 70% of people vaccinated is that there's so many people who are just like, well, I'm going to wait and let and see, if everybody else gets vaccinated first. The issue with that is that this virus is going to continue to mutate. So if we don't reach 70% of people being vaccinated quickly, and I think that's one of the things that Governor DeWine understands, that if we can get have like basically motivation. Like people really want these kids out of their house. So he's just like, well, if I can motivate people to want to get this vaccine so we can get our economy back together. I mean, I'm sure, of course, kids need to be educated and everything, but it's like, January, February. You know what I mean? Within 90 days, it's gonna almost be the end of the school year. I don't know if they're gonna go to in school over the summer. I don't know. But
Doc,
it's one of those things of trying to have some kind of incentive for people to get the vaccine so that we can try to reach that 70%
Mhm.
of herd immunity. I think people will be, more motivated um, to get the kids out of their house.
hey, well, Dr. Sherman, one other thing real quick. Do
Yes.
you think this is the new normal? Do you think we'll ever get to a place where we don't have to wear a mask again and social distancing when things will go back to the way they were?
I think that so there's two kind of answers to that question. Number one is that with the current with the mRNA vaccines, and I don't know about the Johnson & Johnson study. That vaccine is a little bit different. It's a one-dose vaccine. It's adeno vector they use to kind of make a like an inactivated version of the virus. to expose your body to make an immune response. So that was a little bit different um, with the one dose and everything. But with the current vaccines, with the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, they didn't study asymptomatic disease. So because that would require a lot of testing, you know what I mean? You would have to be testing people almost every day to see if they have coronavirus, right? So they only study if people became symptomatic. So when I say that they're 95% effective at preventing coronavirus, I actually
Mhm.
mean symptomatic coronavirus. Because they didn't study asymptomatic. So the reason why that that's the reason why we still have to wear masks. So my husband and I, we both been fully vaccinated. Pretty much all of the MAs who work in our office have been fully vaccinated, but we still have to wear our masks when we go to work. Because there's still a chance that you could be asymptomatic carrier and passing this to other people. And that's the other really big and important reason why people need to get vaccinated still, because people are like, well, I'll just wait and let you all get vaccinated. That doesn't protect you. And I said it once on my Talk Tuesday. That just makes room in the ICU for you. Like if a lot of people have a vaccine and they're protected and you're not protected, they'll just be room for you in the ICU now because they've been full. So it's just one of those things of people think that um, you know, that's how it works. That's not how it works. So even if you have the vaccine, you can still spread the disease potentially.
Mhm.
Like I said, it wasn't studied. So that's why we
Right.
still have to wear masks. And number two part of that question is, or the answer is that that's what they do in Japan and China. So you think about like Japan. So one of my cousins is a dancer on my mom's side. So one of my cousins is a dancer. He teaches dance in Japan. He lives in Japan. He's got a Japanese wife and a Japanese child, and black too. so, but he's there. He lives there, and he said that in Japanese culture, people just wear masks anyway. They're like, there's dust everywhere. There's always some kind of, flu situation or some kind of cold or something going around. It's just part of their culture where they just wear masks. So that's why it really hasn't been that bad in Japan. And the other thing about Japanese people, they don't touch each other. They bow when they see each other. They don't hug. They don't shake hands. So I don't know if our culture will become more like that at some point where people, won't want to hug but I feel like it's going to be the opposite. I feel like when this is over, hopefully when we get to a point where we can have herd immunity and have, this more answers, that people are just going to go like hug crazy.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how we get to that point of being just bowing, no handshakes or anything like that.
Interesting. Okay.
I have another question too. Um, are there any other supportive modalities or things that you can do that would be useful? For instance, I heard that, famotidine, vitamin C, um,
Vitamin
what else
D.
was yeah,
Vitamin D,
vitamin
yeah.
D. Yeah, vitamin D is a big one.
And
Helps support
melatonin.
the
I've
immune
heard I've
system.
heard a yeah,
Melatonin.
I've heard a lot of different things to
Mhm,
try to treat COVID, like if you contract it.
mhm.
The biggest thing about um, COVID, if you develop COVID, now they have a treatment called monoclonal antibodies. So that's what when Trump was diagnosed with COVID, he received the Regeneron, which I believe he might have stock in that company. I didn't know
Yeah,
anything
that's right.
about.
He does. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
also
remember that
what
part.
was the other company? Remdesivir. He has stock in that company too.
Oh, okay, okay. So I know the Regeneron is something that we're offering to people. So they have infusion sites that are set up. So for people who are, at risk, so they have like certain, I think it's like over age 65, or if you have diabetes or high blood pressure, or if you're obese, then you can qualify to be treated with that. If you have to start it early. And so that's basically like, just giving the antibodies that they've created in the lab to people, because they were initially doing like plasma transfusions and that sort of stuff for people who've had the virus and recovered. But now they've been able to make monoclonal antibodies in a lab, which this isn't the first time they've done that. They've done it for all types of stuff. They do it for rabies. We have a monoclonal for rabies, for tetanus. So for different things that are deadly, they can create the monoclonal antibodies. And then so that's kind of the big thing, that if people qualify, they can do that. But I've been telling a lot of people like aspirin lately. So the biggest thing about the COVID, especially if you have a good case of it, is that it can cause people to kind of lay around, and it can cause a lot of sticky blood cells. And so it can cause a lot of strokes, a lot of blood clots, all that sort of stuff. So I've been telling people if they do come down with COVID to make sure they take aspirin for at least 6 months, 6 months to a year. Because it's just been weird. One of my good friends from high school had COVID in the summer, and she had a stroke in December. And we're the same age, both born in
Wow.
the 80s.
Mm.
So it's just a lot of weird. It's just so weird. It's a weird disease. And that's the one thing that I do know that you can try is the aspirin.
Hey,
But other than
There was
that, like
another drug that's a gout drug that I read.
mm,
God, what is it?
allopurinol or colchicine.
Colchicine is
I haven't heard about
effective.
colchicine.
Yeah, it's effective. I just read this too. It's effective at keeping the the what not the antibodies, but inflammation,
Okay.
keeping
Yeah, it's
inflammation down.
anti-inflammatory.
And I guess some countries are recommending colchicine,
Yeah.
when you do become affected. So
Well, they have in the US the best, well, I haven't heard that much about colchicine, but I haven't read about it, so I can't say about that. But
mhm.
I will say that, probably the past few months they have known that if you have severe COVID, to the point where your oxygen levels drop, that steroids can be helpful. So they use a lot of like dexamethasone and prednisone. So that kind of helps suppress the immune system.
hey,
So they've
Dr.
been using,
Shomo, I just wanted to jump in for one second. You mentioned oxygen levels, and
yeah.
I had heard this guy, his name was Dr. Rashid Bhattar, and he was talking about wearing a mask can actually keep your body from absorbing the amount of oxygen you need. And he said that in turn would suppress your immune system. Did you have any comment on that?
No, you can breathe in a mask. I mean, the biggest thing is as doctors, when we bring people back to for the exam. So I'm a primary care doctor, so we check like pulse ox on people all the time, and we have plenty of people who are sitting wearing their masks, and we check their oxygen levels, and it's fine. So I don't know why they would say that. I do know that it's very hard to run in a mask because you're trying to like exchange oxygen and CO2. So I don't
Right.
recommend that people do that. I do tell like so what I do personally is I walk. I don't tend to run. Haven't really been running very much during this whole situation. But then if I do decide to run, I'll try to go a place where there's not a lot of people, and I'll wear my mask, underneath my chin. And if I see people, I'll bring it up or whatever.
Dr. Shomo was a marathon runner too, like she didn't have enough to do.
Oh, really? Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
She runs with this, what's the name of it?
Black Girls Run. Yeah. I run with Black
All
Girls
right.
Run. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a national organization, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's they have running groups. They have a Cleveland chapter, Columbus, Cincinnati. I don't think Dayton has one still. So they have them in certain. They try to have them in places where there's, big a lot of people. I don't know if they ever got one in Louisville because I don't think that Kentucky had any. But there's a lot of Black people in Louisville. But I think it's just a matter of having enough people who are interested in running in those different places. But yeah, they have it on East Coast, West Coast, everywhere. They're everywhere.
We
Say,
got
Dr.
another
Shomo,
question.
Robert, let me get in one more little piece and then I'll let you have it.
Mhm.
Okay, Dr. Shomo, Black people in general, a lot of them seem to be reluctant to take the vaccine. And part of this goes back to, remembering things like the Tuskegee study and,
Mhm.
other experimental things.
Birth control study.
Yeah, birth control study, when people being sterilized and what have you. So what do you think it's going to take to, change that perception?
Well, I think, part
That
of
was
it is just,
actually the question I got too.
oh, was
Okay.
it? Yeah, I think that for a lot of Black doctors, we are trying to at least have conversations with people. I think that for me, the biggest thing is I want people to like use reputable sources. So I think part of what's hard right now is that people go to Facebook and all these places, all these conspiracy theory groups and all that sort of thing to get information. And so I've been telling people, just encouraging people to have a conversation with their doctor. Like I said, I've read the studies. Like I haven't read the Johnson studies yet because it hasn't been approved yet. But I have read the Moderna and Pfizer because they've both been out for a while, and I've done different talks on them. So I think that just having conversations with people who understand, what is happening and how to explain it to you versus basically listen to the wrong people. And I think that, and I feel like it could be, like I said, I don't know why people are interested in spreading fear and that sort of thing. I know that people have concerns about, experimentation, all that sort of thing. But I don't understand why people are not more concerned about coronavirus. Like, it's literally killed over 400,000 people. It's like, I think the other day, the number was 450,000 people. So for me, it's just like, I would rather take my chances with the vaccine. Like, is it an experiment? Am I part of the study group? Probably. You know what I mean? I don't know. But it's just one of those things of, if you get COVID, you're part of the experiment group too. And I don't want to be in an experiment group of people being dead. So it's just one of those things of
Yeah.
understanding the risk.
Dr.
The risk.
Shomo, I got a question for you. Do you
Yeah.
think that you could go back to your colleagues and basically try to advocate to get some kind of uh, information out to the people to only take the vaccine from a reputable doctor or reputable place that's certified? Because see, like I said, I was concerned about this black market stuff, and
Right.
there's so many scams going on with this COVID things that
Right.
the doctors are going to have to, somebody's going to step in and talk about that. They're trying to act like it's not happening, but even they had a doctor that took and some people saw the doctor take some of the coronavirus vials out.
Yeah, in Texas or something like that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that story, and I don't know that. Yeah, he definitely should have done that, but I don't know that he was trying to sell it on the black market. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know. But I think that in general, like, you should get your health information from reputable sources. You should get your vaccine from reputable places. So for me, that's my biggest thing is I don't want to feel like, I know that one of the concerns that I've had, because my patients have said this to me before, is that a lot of people don't trust doctors.
Right.
They think that we get some kind of kickback from the pharmaceutical companies. They think that we're in it for the money and all this sort of stuff, because we do get paid well. But there's been studies that show that you could literally be a teacher and make as much money as a doctor, because we go to school for so long and we have so much debt and we work a lot of hours. So it's just like, it's really not even worth the money. But that's what people think. And I think part of it just has to do with, because, the way our economy is set up, like, we have healthcare as a business. So I understand that. And I understand that's why people don't trust it. So I never want to be, and I've been very reluctant to be like, everybody needs to go get it, all this sort of thing. Like, I'm not going to be that person to say it, because I feel like that builds mistrust, because people are like, well, why are you trying to push the vaccine on me? So I have not wanted to be that kind of person, to be like,
Snake oil, huh? You got the snake oil going?
right, yeah, I don't want to be that person. I want to have dialogue and conversations, but I also want people to know that we don't get any money from any vaccine companies. And people, because, like, even in my office, like, I had somebody, like, I recently did a discussion about the HPV vaccine with someone from Ghana, and they asked me, how much does the HPV vaccine cost in the US? And I'm like, well, technically it costs $150, but the government pays for it, or your health insurance pays for it. So it doesn't cost you anything. So in my office, I do not bill patients for any vaccines. I don't make any money off of it. We literally get the vaccines from the government. We bill the insurance. Like, there's no money exchanged about any of it. So I think that people like, we literally charge a $15 fee to administer it. That's the only money that my office gets from any vaccines, $15 to administer, to literally buy a syringe and a needle and inject it into the arm. That's all the money we get. And it's not even any money. Like, that's like, what you get, $5 after that, or $10 after you have the supplies, and then the time for the people to give it. So I think that there's a lot of misconception that people think that we make money off of vaccines as physicians. And so people are like, but that's why we try to tell people that, like, we don't make any money off of vaccines. Vaccines are covered by the government. The government pays for it. So, the pharmaceutical companies are making money off of it, but they're not paying us any money to go and promote the vaccine. We truly, as physicians, believe in preventive health, and we truly are tired of seeing people die of a disease, seeing our colleagues die, seeing our patients die, seeing our families die. Like, it's just been so much death. And that is our motivation. And I think a lot of people think there's so much ulterior motives. Like, what are the motives? And it's like, our motives are that we sacrifice our entire youth to this profession to help people. And we don't have any motives to go around trying to inject people with things to make them infertile or to try to kill them or to try to make any money. We don't have any motives like that. And that's what's been the hardest. That's what's been the hardest thing about this whole pandemic in general. It's like, we have given our whole lives to this career. And then people try to say, well, we don't trust you because you're just in it for the money. And I remember the first day of medical school. When I went to Ohio State, they said, which I already went there. So when I just moved across campus to the medical school, they said doctors are at high risk of getting divorced. They have high risk of suicide. If you want to make money, go into business. This is not the place for you if you're here for the money. That's what they told us on the first day of medical school. And so then to know that and to know all of the work that we put into being in this position and all the work that we do, all the people who don't see their kids, who don't see their families, all this sort of stuff, all like forever. And then when you try to tell people, like, I really, hope that people go and get the vaccine. And then they say, well, you're just in it for the money. It is just the word, like, it's been, like I said, it's just been it's been a very traumatic time to be a healthcare worker.
Dr. Shomo, we're running out of time. Can you, tell people how they can, follow you?
So my website, I have 2 different websites now. So I have Dr. Shomo Knows website. So it's above my head right here. drshomoKnows.com, www.drshomoKnows.com. And I also recently released a book called Health is Love. I have it right here, actually. Let me grab it. So I have a different website for this. So this is just, because that's what I really feel. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we really, out of love for our communities, are trying to get people to get this vaccine, trying to stop this pandemic so we can try to have some resemblance of normal life. But it's just it's gonna be rough because this is just such a traumatic time, and it's just never, like, a lot of things will never be the same.
Well, I have the book. I have the book, by the way.
Oh,
a signed copy. I have a signed copy. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have the book too.
I bet you do.
I've got to get it then. Hey, well, Dr. Shomo, which one deals with weight loss? I got a lot of weight to lose.
Well, My Health is Love book just talks about trying to work on yourself and trying to figure out why. Like, why you have a hard time losing weight. Like, what is it? What is a lot of times it's a relationship that we have with food and that sort of thing. Like, why do you
the real reason? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trying to go beneath the surface. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hey, this has been a great 1 hour. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that the people that are watching and listening learned a lot. We got a few questions answered. I thought I knew a lot. I've been reading a lot about the virus, but it's nice to have an expert on from time to time. So we want to really thank you for taking the time out, because an hour of your time, I'm glad Verl's paying for it and not me. I'll just put it like that. But, our time is up, and we certainly thank you for yours, and particularly you, Dr. Shomo.
Very enlightening.
Do you have any closing thoughts, Verl?
I want to thank Dr. Shomo for that very enlightening presentation. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, she said some things that reached some people. She definitely gave me some things to think about. And Dr. Shomo, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep that in mind. And was it healing is love? Is that what you're saying?
Health is love.
Health is love.
Yeah, so I didn't say that. I have a website for that too. So that one is www.healthislove.co. But there's a link to it on my Dr. Shomo Knows. So all of it is on my Dr. Shomo Knows.
Okay, she has workout. She has workout videos too. I've done a couple of them.
I definitely need that.
I do yoga on Sundays. It's more about trying to, my yoga is a little bit different. It's not
Okay.
completely Zen. It's like I'm sure I got a little bit of ADD. I'm sure my whole family does. So I try to like get all the energy out and then try to Zen it out.
There we go. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks again, Dr. Shomo. We appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks again. Good night.
Good
Yeah.
Night.
Bye.